Okay. Well done, Weezy. Biodynamics and wine Feng Shui. You know, every time we start talking about biodynamics with anyone from Chinese persuasion, will say to me, you know, they're using the lunar calendar. Is there some sort of reason for this? What's the link? You know, and I say, well, I have to say, if there's anyone that's going to grasp what's going on, you know, out of all of nationalities on this planet, it's going to be the Chinese, because all this is about, you know, the calendar, the lunar calendar. You know, that's where its links go back to. But I think more importantly, there's three guys here who will sit ducks in a row. That, you know, you could do a thesis on the subject and not really sort of grasp the wholeness of it. The best thing to do is to get, you know, three practitioners, you know, that are quite articulate on it. And we have a big talk session, a question and answer. And I'll get them to kick off, but in the background there'll be these slides. I'm not going to use them I'm not going to talk through the slides at all. They're just pictures for you to subliminally take them in the background. But I think if you go back to the basis of all this, it's about all these three guys, and I'm Ted Lemon, the fourth. Ted is biodynamically with us next door. We're transcending ourselves across the walls. That's the way it's working at the moment. You know, it's farming, and it's going back to the way things were. So it's not rocket science. It's everything that was and got changed, and then back. You know, now we're trying to change it back. And it's about agriculture that takes care of all the property. And that encompasses so many different facets. It's not like it's that simple. And these guys know more about it than I do. But it is about actually, you know, all these things of going back to nature. And that, I guess, transcends into, if you're trying to make a wine that speaks of your place, then why would you stuff the place up? You know, it's like there are a lot of things that get changed on the way through. But I'm going to ask Nigel to kick it off, I think. Yeah. Nigel can kick off with, you know, just what he thinks of, you know, what's happening down in Dalton Road and how they're biodynamic.
No, I'm not going to talk about it.
You do that what you like.
Look, we're talking philosophy here. We're not talking rules or religions. So everybody has their own idea, and will generally agree on the broader things, but we all have our own way to interpret this. There isn't a right and a wrong way to do biodynamics, but there are some fundamental principles that you have to really embrace and surrender yourself to if you're going to do it. I'll explain it in the words of Nick Mills, who is the proprietor of Ripon in Central Otago, and Nick, well, you know Nick way back, and in fact, was it you probably who got Nick starting thinking that way, maybe, Pascal?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I think you work at other places in Burgundy, but I think the only place where you worked was biodynamic was at the Ville de Bougelet.
Yeah, and then Confluent were just kind of starting to convert afterwards. Yeah. But Nick puts it this way. He talks about the need to have a conversation with your land. Traditionally, the relationship between a farmer and the land that the farmer owns is the role of slave master and slave. It's the farmer saying, I own you, and you will grow what I tell you to. And of course, as with all slaves and slave masters, you behave that way. You then need to get an army, because there'll be insurrections. There'll be revolutions from the land because it won't like the way it's being treated. And he talks about the idea of learning to negotiate with your land, learning to understand it, not through a literal conversation. He doesn't walk around and talk to his vines, but he tries to think about, if they could talk to me, what would they say? And the point he makes, the first thing they'd say is, I don't want 5,000 vines on me, please. Will you please shift them somewhere else? Because you can tell the land doesn't want to be a vineyard very simply. You can simply stop working it and see if it stays as a vineyard. And of course it won't. Weeds will grow, vines will die, the whole thing will return to chaos. So a vineyard's an artificial construction, it's not something natural. So we have to try and figure out, if we want this thing to live on the land, what do we give the land back so the land is happy, can bear the burden of it, can tolerate it, and a harmony can exist between the vines and the land on which they're grown. And to me, that's the most basic philosophy. You get the negotiation process going mentally, and you're then thinking, instead of looking at your land and saying, what do I want it to do, you're saying, what can I do for it? What can I do to make it work more happily, more sustainably? And the most amazing things happen when you start to think that way. The whole way you relate to your land changes. And in all sorts of different extraordinary ways, you learn to observe the chains in the ecosystem and how they work. And as you start to learn them, you start to learn how you can play with them and play wonderful games with them. We started planting between the vines. We have a lot of cover crops. We started planting peas in there. We were planting peas because I wanted some peas to eat at lunchtime. Throw some between the vines, we got some food. And then something interesting happened. We started having pigeons visiting the vineyard. We'd never ever seen a pigeon in the vineyard before, but pigeons love peas. So the pigeons would come into the vineyard to eat peas. And then we had falcons coming to live in the vineyard because falcons like pigeons. So the falcons would come in to hunt pigeons. And suddenly all the birds that eat the grapes weren't there anymore, because the falcons were there looking for the pigeons, who were looking for the peas, who were trying to eat my lunch. And it's these chains of nature. And when you don't think about them, they work against you. And when you think about them and you just understand their rhythm and how they operate, suddenly everything starts to work for you.